Hi friends, welcome to the Cripple Chronicles, a podcast about a Lazaroff frames, amputation and the journey to accepting and embracing disability. My name is Becca and I am your host. You know the score, like, subscribe, rate, review, all that jazz, but let's just get into this week's episode. So I ended last week's episode with getting emotional about going for the surgery for amputation. I briefly mentioned the process of getting out of hospital and getting home, but I wanted to speak about it more in depth. To be honest, I was going to do that last week, but I noticed I was already at 45 minutes odd recording and I was like, damn, this is going to be far too long if I start this today. So you have a wee episode on its own. I did realise that I missed something out from last week's episode. When my leg had snapped, I had messaged my ex and told him, and he had asked if he could come up to see me. A few days after I was admitted to the hospital, he came up to see me. I just felt so fucking awkward. I think he was only there for about 25 minutes. He didn't say a lot. He did a lot of pacing about the hospital room. I still think that he blames himself for all of this, but nobody could have predicted this happening. After he had been to see me, he had asked to borrow a tenner off of me. He was going to pay me back on the Friday before I got my leg amputated. He didn't pay me that money back when he said he would, which I suppose after previous things that shouldn't have really been surprising. The night before I had my surgery, I sent him a message and I said that it was best that we weren't in each other's lives anymore. I had said that I would let him know that I was okay after I had the surgery, but in messaging everybody, he was one of the people I forgot to message. I didn't hear from him for about 5 or 6 days. I think that really was the final nail in the coffin. I was somebody he supposedly loved and cared about, but he didn't want to know how I was after I got my leg chopped off. I told him when I was getting discharged from hospital that his stuff would be outside for him to collect, as I didn't want him in my space. We have had very little contact since then. So I had my surgery. When I woke up in recovery, I was in a lot of pain. It took them quite a while to be able to get it under control, and it literally just felt like my right leg was on fire. My stump was all bandaged up and I had a catheter inserted so that I could go to the toilet without risking getting the dressing dirty. I was told that the dressings would be removed after day 5 and I would then be able to wear a pomade bag for compression for my stump, as they didn't have any compression socks that were big enough to fit it. Initially, it was a really weird feeling. I was lying in bed and I just felt like I wanted to wiggle my toes or that my foot on my right side was itchy, even though there was nothing there anymore. I think the staff were surprised at how well I was coping with everything that was happening. One of the nurses commented that whenever she came in, I always had a smile on my face and that I was a model patient on how to deal with amputation. That was a massive compliment, but I also felt like I was just dealing with it how I was dealing with it, if that makes any sense. I had already been thinking about amputation and it was as if it was this big dark cloud that had been looming over my head for the past 2.5 years. That cloud had already broke and I was sitting in the downfall, but as someone who hadn't sat outside in the rain for years, it was comforting. It was a relief. I had no longer had the weight of the frame on my leg. When I was in my wheelchair, even though I had my catheter bag strapped to the back and one leg, it was the most mobile and free that I had felt in years. I was just so excited to get home and see what life was going to be like. But to get home, I obviously had to pass some tests to see if I was safe enough to be at home. And they were also wanting to do some physio assessments to judge my suitability for a prosthetic. When they initially came around, I have a chuckle whenever I think about it, because they had me sitting on the side of the bed and they were looking at what my sitting balance was like. And after they'd been in, my aunt had came up to visit me and I was telling her that they were checking my balance, and she was like, well, why do they need to check your balance? And I just laughed. I was like, well, they have literally chopped off one of my legs, which I think that's a big part of your balance, to be honest. The day that the bandages were removed, my gran had come up to visit me. I think when she had come in, I had the pomade bag on my leg, so my stump was covered up. And when they came to take it in, I had asked her if she was ready to see it, but she was definitely a bit apprehensive and was like, I don't really know. I was pretty happy when they had taken my bandages off, because it revealed that I still had my full wolf tattoo on my leg. Even if he's a little busted up and got scars, it just makes him look badass. They took the pomade bag off and my gran had a look, and then we were sitting and I had put my stump underneath the sheet, and she had said to me, are you doing that because of me? I need to get used to seeing it as well, so please don't just cover it up for me. Before she had left, she had taken a picture of me, and I think it was later on that night she had sent me the picture and she had said, I just wanted you to be able to see what it looks like from my point of view. And then the next day she had sent me a message saying that it was one of the best night's sleep she had had in a long time, because she was just so worried. She knew that even if I had one leg, I was still just the same Becca. I managed to transfer from my bed to the wheelchair, and then I was able to stand up and turn around to sit in the toilet. So my catheter was removed and I was basically doing everything by myself. I didn't really see the point in being in hospital after that. I was told that to be discharged, I needed a smaller wheelchair, as the one that I had was wider, and I had asked for a smaller wheelchair, but they were saying that it wasn't safe for me to go home in the wheelchair that I had, but I couldn't quite understand that because I was literally just seeing nurses to get my medication and my meals. I was able to go downstairs in the hospital by myself in this wheelchair, and I was having no issues, so why wouldn't I be able to do that at home? Whoever provides the wheelchairs, I'm not sure if it was Westmark, but they had told me that it was roughly going to be a week initially, and it got to a week and they had said there'd been a backlog and they didn't know how long it was going to be. And I was just so sick of being in hospital at this point. I hate hospital food. I hate not having quiet, not being in my own environment. I missed Simba. I just wanted to be home in my own bed. I had spoke to one of the doctors and they had said they saw no issue with me going home with the wheelchair that I was in, as I was already safely using it around the hospital. I didn't need any changes to the house because the equipment I already had living with the frame was going to be just as useful when I had one leg. So I had went to the physio gym. We had went through a list of things to see how suitable I would be for a prosthetic, looking at me between the parallel bars, hopping, balancing on my remaining leg, doing some stuff on the bed, like stretches and things. I can't really remember what exactly it was that we did. They had also spoke about me being able to safely get up off of the floor. And when the guy had got down onto the floor, it made me really, really anxious because I thought that with the movement in my knee at the moment, that is actually, there's no way that I'm going to be safely be able to go onto the floor without hurting myself. So then I'm not going to be able to get back up. So we decided to leave that. However, I have never had to get up off of the floor yet. in a scenario where I have fallen or something like that. But the last time that I was at physio, I did actually manage to get onto the floor and get back up off of the floor, which makes the idea of if I fall less scary. That's a big if. I'm not putting anything out there into the universe. They had said they were wanting me to try having the pomade on with the metal bit, because when I'd had it on in the bed, it was literally just the bag for the compression, and they wanted to see that if I was going to be able to walk with it. However, it needed a specific physio to be able to do this, and they had already finished at that time. And then when they came to see me the next day, there wasn't somebody in. I was just getting really done in, to be honest. I had seen one of the other physios, and she had kind of went through all of the other stuff that I had been through the day before, and I ended up saying to her, look, I have been told by the doctors that I'm safe to go home. I don't need any OT equipment at the moment. I'm not doing anything physio-wise. Can I just get referred to Westmark and go home? I probably will be discharging myself today for my mental health if you don't discharge me yourself. She had agreed, she'd said I was safe, and I got in contact with B and said, right, bitch, cool, going home today, are you able to pick me up? They started getting all of the stuff sorted for my discharge for me to get home. My gran came up with boxes of chocolate for the ward staff. I got my medication from the pharmacy, and I went to give the nurses the chocolates and say thank you for everything over the past few years. I was in the main ward that I had been in and out of as an inpatient for almost 3 years. Although I had some bad experiences in that time, I also can't deny how grateful that I am. There was a nurse who had taken the staples out from my very first surgery, and she had asked if she would be able to give me a hug, which I was all for. She had also said that she hoped to see me back, not as a patient, but maybe in a professional capacity, which was really lovely. B came to pick me up. We went to go and collect Simba from my aunt's and head home. When we got back to mine, we ordered some pizza, which I got a lot of humour out of how well the box was fitting in the space where my leg no longer was. We also had a good laugh, as when I had taken my big built-up shoe out of the bag, B had asked, do you still need that? And I just laughed and I was like, yeah mate, they're going to make my prosthetic smaller just so I can get the use out of this shoe. When we were in the car home, B had said how nice it was to see me be able to move about and not see me in pain anymore. And that shook me a wee bit, because although I knew that even taking painkillers, when I moved, the pins would still pull and hurt me. The ring at the inside of my leg was incredibly close, so sometimes it would rub against it and be sore. But I thought that I was hiding it well. I didn't realise how much that I was actually showing it outwardly. After she had left, she had also then texted me just to tell me how proud of me she was and how she couldn't wait for us to have lots more adventures together. I had cancelled my carers when I was admitted to the hospital, but they didn't know why. I thought when I was discharged that the hospital would have been in contact with them, because I'm sure that's normally the case. But on the first day, I was in the kitchen sorting out my lunch when my lunchtime carer came in, and she was pure happy to see that I was home, and I turned round in my chair and she just went, oh my gosh, was that why you were in the hospital? We thought that you must have had an infection or something. And I kind of told her all what had happened, and then a couple of weeks later the care coordinator had came out to meet me, as I actually hadn't met with her before. I was in bed when she had came in, so I'd had like the covers over me, and I had said something about life being easier since I got my leg chopped off, and she was like, oh, you've had an amputation? And I was like, yeah, that's why I was in the hospital. And she was like, oh, I knew that you were thinking about it before, but I didn't actually know that you had went for it. And I found it quite funny that it was just, that was how I told her, by just saying something about having my leg chopped off. Like, blasé way to say it, and she had no idea about it, which the fact that they were unaware was slightly concerning. Things definitely felt a lot easier without the frame on. Like I had said, I didn't have the weight of the frame on my leg anymore. Having my leg amputated really was a relief, as much as I didn't want that to be the outcome. I think it was maybe the best scenario. Not long after I got out of hospital, I reduced my care visits, and then I was able to completely stop them because I didn't need people coming in anymore. I was able to live my life to a point of independence that I didn't need carers. I had my first appointment at Westmark for physio. I think it was about 3 weeks after my amputation. When I went, I tried the pomade on and I managed to walk between the parallel bars. All of the walking practice over the past few years, the multiple times I had had to relearn how to walk, really felt as if it was paying off because this adjustment was probably easier from me doing that. I then went for a prosthetics appointment where they checked over my good leg and different bits and pieces, and then I was cast for my first prosthetic, which I got really quickly. I think it was like a month after my surgery, and I thought it was going to be so much longer than that, but I was so buzzing. I could now start working with the physios and becoming a pro at walking again. The prosthetic I currently have is a locked knee, so it's straight when I'm standing up, it doesn't bend, and then when I'm sitting down, I have a wee lever to pull which bends the knee for me. Best to start with that one because I had had my leg straight for nearly 3 years, and with having a prosthetic that has a moving knee, it's all about your weight distribution. If I put my weight through that long, the knee could buckle and I could end up on my arse, and that would have been such a setback for me to try at that. And if I was constantly falling, I think it would have put me off. It would have made me feel more anxious. The last physio appointment I had, maybe about a month ago, they had told me that I was at a point where I was suitable to progress to a free knee from looking at how I'm doing. However, it means that they need to discuss it at meetings with other professionals to make sure that right now this is the best possible move for me. So I'm just sitting patiently waiting for the news that I can level up my prosthetic. Right now I have been having some issues with my socket fitting properly. Whenever I seem to get a prosthetic, it's bigger than they thought it was going to be, and I was having to wear more socks. The last one I got was very quick for me growing out of it, and when I was wearing it, it started pinching up in the inside of my thigh, and it literally felt like somebody was biting me anytime I would put weight through my leg. So I got cast for another one, and I got it, and it was fine for a few weeks, and then it started doing the exact same thing. So we've now had to have other adjustments, and I have an appointment at the end of the month to then go back and see what the next kind of steps are for getting a prosthetic that is a comfortable fit for me. I knew when I opted for amputation that it wasn't going to be plain sailing, that there was going to be road bumps, tiredness, pains. It's less than what I had to deal with the frame on, but on some days it still really gets me down because I want to be able to wear my leg to progress and move on, but then it's hurting me, so I can't do it, and then I need to wait for an appointment, and it's just, I've had to use so much patience in the last 3 years that it's still just really frustrating when things don't go right the first time, but that's just life sometimes, and it's okay because bad days happen and my healing isn't linear. I had physio weekly for 2 hours between September and December. During this, we worked on just getting the hang of walking with a prosthetic in the parallel bars, using my crutches safely so that I was then allowed to wear my leg at home. I then progressed from walking with 2 crutches to walking with 2 walking sticks, and I am currently down to walking with 1 stick. In December, I was able to take steps within the parallel bars without needing any aids, which is a goal that I have had for years. Outside of the bars, I still use 1 stick, but I know I'm capable of whatever I put my mind to, and in time I hopefully will be able to walk without using that walking stick anymore. Like I said, it was something that I wanted for so long, to be able to move about and have my hands free again. I beat myself up a lot initially that there was so many people that didn't need aids with the frame, yet I had to use crutches constantly. But like I think I've mentioned before, everyone is different, and I really shouldn't have been comparing myself to what other people were able to do, only to myself and the progress that I was making. Eleanor had come up a couple of weeks after I had had my amputation. She was doing my hair for me, and I was sitting in the shower chair in the living room waiting for her to come out of the bathroom, and she came out and she just went, "Oh my gosh, Becca," and she said it in a way that I was like, "What is it? Is everything okay?" And she just burst out laughing because she was like, I just caught myself. I was about to be like, "What happened to your leg?" As if you don't already know that there's something wrong. And it was just so funny. There has been so many little moments where it's kind of caught somebody off guard, or there's been a comment that is just really silly, but it's a reminder that it's not just me that's adapting and coming to terms with it. Everybody else is as well. It actually makes it feel a wee bit less lonely and just adds some lightheartedness into it, I guess. In the 8 months since amputation, I have progressed in a way that I never really expected. I guess I should have, because anything I say and I really want to do, I'll do it. I've managed to get out of the house more, starting off small and going out with friends in the car. I got a support worker who came out and took me on the bus, but after we had been on the first time, I realised how much easier it was to get on the bus having my leg amputated than it was with the frame on, so I was able to do it myself very quickly after that. I started working myself up to getting further on my own, going out and getting my nails and my brows done. Me, Helly and Bee went to have a gals weekend with Eleanor and Faye. We got a cute wee bungalow that had a hot tub. My thinking was bungalow, probably cripple friendly, not a lot of steps. However, that wasn't quite right. Some of the doors were very narrow that I couldn't get my wheelchair in, especially the bathroom. So anytime I had to pee, I had to just leave my wheelchair at the door and hop into the bathroom. But we made it work. I managed to get into the hot tub with a little help from my friends, and it was a very weird sensation on my stump initially with the water, but it really felt freeing being able to do it. After me and Bee had stayed in the hot tub for far too long, we had got out and it was raining, and me and Eleanor had sat and had a smoke, and there was a moment where I just sat with my eyes closed, feeling the rain on my skin and feeling just so grateful for being alive and being in the energy that I was surrounded by. Because the path to the hot tub wasn't the best, my wheelchair wheels were covered in mud, and initially me and Eleanor had tried to scrub at them with some wipes, but it really wasn't doing anything. So Faye had grabbed a basin of water and I got up, and Eleanor stood and washed down my wheels for me to go back inside, and that just filled my heart with so much love. It kind of goes back to the episode where I was simping over my pals, but it was just that feeling of acceptance and love and having people around me that would do things to help me that make me feel comfortable. It was just such a nice feeling. When we had went to go back into the house, we had another sitcom sketch type moment because there was like 2 or 3 steps to get up into the back door. So we had decided that we would put my wheelchair on one of the steps and I would sit down into it, then stand up, put the wheelchair up and do the same thing again. However, when we put it down the first time, it was facing the wrong way and I was trying to turn and there was not enough room on the step for me to be turning, and Eleanor was going a bit wild and I was like, it's fine, I've got it. She was like, no, you're going to need to stand up. So I stood up. She was like, Becca, stop, I am going to wet myself. And we just had to have a moment where I was like, okay, breathe, it's all good. And we just can't really take it seriously. However, got up the stairs, get into the house, and the other girls were like, saw you outside, and we had thought, oh, will we give you a hand? But we knew if you needed help that you would ask, and it looked like you kind of had it, and it was quite funny to watch, to be honest. I would have never been able to do that with a frame on if I'd tried, and I think I would have paid for it for weeks afterwards. I was tired when I got home from this trip, but I wasn't in agony or needed a week to recover. A lot of things now, if it's better than what it was like when the frame was on, then that's a win in my book. I've been managing to go to the gym, to walk on the treadmill and build up my stamina in that way, as well as using one of the wee step-up blocks to practice my balance and my stepping up. Recently, I have been able to do reps of stepping up where I don't have my walking stick or I hold on to anything, which just makes me so proud of myself to be able to do that. When I was in the gym a few weeks ago, I had a woman come up to me who was using a stroller and had said that she just wanted to say that she thought that I was amazing, and seeing me in the gym and just kind of doing a workout makes her feel better about being in the gym, and had kind of sat and chatted to me. A few days ago, I also managed to go into Glasgow and meet up with Elle, which was something that we had been talking about since I had the first frame on, that we would be able to go and have some coffee and some lunch again, just like we had before I had the accident. We had got coffee and we're sitting and just chatting and having a nice wee time, and we got some matching squishmallows because it's not an impulsive buy-in if it's matching with your friends, obviously. I had noticed that the pavements were so much easier to navigate than what they were with the frame on. There was no point where I felt as if I really needed to ask Elle to give me a hand. It felt a lot less anxiety inducing knowing that she was there if I did come across something that I was struggling with. There was a lot of people around, which was very overwhelming. It made me quite anxious, but I got quite a few compliments, so I was clearly looking bomb as fuck, and I felt really good about myself before I left the house, so it just gave me an extra wee boost. And then, finally for today, I had been talking about wanting to drive again since I had my accident. 3 weeks after I crashed, I was looking at cars and insurance. I didn't want this experience to stop me. When my leg was fused, I wasn't sure how I would get in the passenger side of a car, never mind getting in the driver's side, and I just didn't know if it was even going to be possible. I got a referral for the driving assessment centre. I was meant to have an appointment on the 13th of December, the day after the accident anniversary, which I have completely forgot to mention anniversary number 3 because it was easier this year, but I also spent most of the day just totally checked out. I'd spent it on my own and it was a bit of a struggle, but we got through it and I got ready the next day and I was like, okay, let's get this done, go to this assessment, find out what car I need to drive. I was sitting waiting and I went to phone patient transport to see where they were and realised that my phone wasn't connecting. So I restarted it, and when I restarted it, I got answer phone messages through saying that they had cancelled my transport. So I then had to phone the assessment centre and say, look, I'm really sorry, but my transport's cancelled. I then got an appointment for the start of January, where I found out I was going to be more comfortable to drive with a left foot accelerator. I had the option of hand controlled, but I really didn't like it. I like kind of having both my hands on the steering wheel and having to have one hand controlling the accelerator and stuff. I just didn't like that. So after this appointment, I went away to look for instructors and I found it really hard initially. I had been given a list of people, but the list of people that I had didn't actually cover the area that I stayed in, but I emailed them anyway just to see if they had possibly any availability. I didn't hear back from anybody. I only found one person online who I tried to get in contact, but I didn't hear back from her. And then eventually I heard back from a guy who had said that he didn't really know if he had availability, but because it was going to be for a few lessons, he would try and get me sorted in. We went out and did a few lessons. These lessons were just kind of basic driving. The main things I was worried about was being around cars, driving at speed. I was really worried that there was going to be something that I would do that would trigger some kind of flashback. But I did about 5 hours of lessons and I never really had any issues, especially when there was an instance when we were driving quite a narrow road and a car came speeding round the corner and I just hit my brakes because there was nothing around me and I just felt a wee bit, and my instructor had said that was the right thing to do, like they shouldn't have been driving at that speed. Yesterday I went back to the assessment centre in Edinburgh and I managed to drive about Edinburgh for about an hour, going about the route with absolutely no issues. Every junction or turning that we seemed to come to had such shite visibility, and I had said that to the OT and he was like, yeah, that's why we take this route, like normally if you can drive this route then you can drive anywhere. And it just made me feel really confident. The only thing that I messed up on was the reverse parking, and part of that I'm going to put it down to when I was doing my refresher lessons, the guy just let me use the camera that was on the car, and they also had like blue tack stuck on the window. And when I was doing it, I was like, okay, I need to be 3 lines away, but then I couldn't remember how far back I had to reverse and start turning. So I got into the space, but I was quite squint. And he had said, look, that's not something that's going to go against you. It's just something that you're going to need to practice with, but you are fit to drive. I am able to start looking at cars and stuff like that. I just need the DVLA to code my licence for me. I cried a lot yesterday. I had noticed when I had written a post that it was the 12th of May, which means that it was exactly 3 years and 5 months since I had had my accident, that it came full circle and I was signed off fit to drive again. I really feel like that was the one last thing to totally end that chapter in my life. I got the frame off, I've been discharged from orthopaedics, and I'm fit to drive again. It really feels like the accident and the aftermath chapter of my life is closed, and now it is just on to me living life, being the badass amputee that I am. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Cripple Chronicles. I hope you have enjoyed it. I actually had one of my pals say to me the other day that he didn't really know what people had experienced being disabled, and that I was able to teach him things. And I think that was really important to me. This is just my experience and the things that I have heard, and I would always encourage people, if you're going through something, to go away and do your own research and speak to people that are professionals and kind of know their stuff about this thing, like whatever it is that you're looking to do. This isn't something that I'm doing this podcast so that people will like get your leg amputated instead of getting your frame off. That's not what this is for, obviously. But yeah, I actually don't know why I started saying this, so I'm just going to wrap that there and finish rounding up this episode. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, turn the bell on for notifications or whatever you do. On audio platforms, please rate and review. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Cripple Chronicles Pod, and anything you would like to chat to me about, send me an email at cripplecchroniclespod@gmail.com. I hope you have a lovely week. I will see you next week. Bye!